What's up, y'all? What's going on? Welcome back. Welcome back. I am Angelica with In God's Timing. I'm stopping to do a video. Today is March 26, 2023. So, a part of the things that I'm going to be talking about today is a part of my game over, okay? Flip. Okay, we have no more time for games. We have no more time for doing business as usual. We are at a place in a time that so much is taking place so quickly, and understanding that time is of the essence, right? The choices that we make, the things that we do, how we move and maneuver is vital, right? Um, it's so easy to deflect from the truth. In conversations that I've even had recently, it still all boils back down to what is the root issue? What is the cause? How did we get here? So I will listen to different people, and a part of this comes from because of experience, because of observation, different areas that God has slowed me down in, okay, to pay attention. This is familiar. When I didn't even recognize that He was striving to get my attention, when I didn't even recognize that the choices that I was making, the voices that I was hearing from even people, or people not saying certain things and correcting me, addressing certain pathways or things they saw me doing, it allowed me to understand how I got here. But first and foremost, the best, and I guess you could say the part of it that's a blessing, is this past week the Lord allowed me, or had me, to write a timeline down of my life from 2004 to now. And it brought me back to a point to even acknowledge and understand how much He has had His hands on my life. So when I didn't even know that He was calling me out of trouble, when I didn't even understand and know that I was calling or chose, or just different things I didn't understand at the time, because everything happens in His timing. But a part of it, just to be thankful to understand that it could have been you, because during this time frame, okay, I've seen a lot of people that are not here anymore. I've seen a lot of people that are still here that look like what they went through. You will have some people say that black don't crack, and all these different things. It does. To where sometimes life will take a toll on you, not just on your materialistic things, but on your actual flesh. How you look to people, you'll look like you've been through a lot. You'll look like you're going through just different things. We can relate to that. We've seen that in different people. So even I understand that the things that I'm talking about, or some of the things that I begin to do in my assignment, is not for everybody. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. But understanding that we all have a purpose, right? We all have an assignment. So when I hear people even question, how do I know God is calling me, or He's speaking to me, or calling out? No one can come to the Father unless He calls them. So with many of my people, we have been brought up in church, brought up around the Word. But this is a part where I have had to, I've had conflict, right? And we want to problem solve and deal with things at hand to be able to understand what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, why we keep seeing the same things over and over again, right? As I said, like playing Russian roulette with your life. Some are dancing with death. Okay, we know with Russian roulette, you taking a risk. You playing with life. So even though it may not look in that perspective, many have been playing with life, not even realizing that, okay, look, you got one life to live. This is it. This is all. This is it. So where you go, whichever your destination is when you leave here, this is it. Make it count. Make it make sense. So in Jeremiah 29:11, It says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." So it's some of us that, the way that the cards have been dealt or things that we have experienced in life, this doesn't make sense. To where you may have so many obstacles and challenges, and people say, "Oh, you got to do this and do that," like a formula or a plan, but it's not making sense. So then we don't factor in, because this is a part of the things that I've experienced and dealt with, even with talking to God and when I was seeking Him, and still, always seeking Him, to where I didn't realize that I was dealing with curses, generational curses. Didn't realize I was cursing myself. Many people will end up saying, you should do this and you should do that, and will correct you, or even say parents and loved ones and this nation, because I'm in the U.S., okay? And some all over the world, to where you should do this and do that, and if you do this, you will you'll be able to gain access to this. Just get the degree. Just raise a family. Do this. But they didn't give the insight on that there was things strategically to set us up for failure. So as a people, when, like I said, things weren't making sense, when I began to recognize that, in my own life, but then people I began to talk to, like, it's been like a struggle. It's been like you trying to get right. You trying to make it make sense, dealing with trauma and different things. Because even myself, things that I was introduced to, it came over time. But at the same time, it was people who were close. Whether it was family, friends, the church, people that I met, things that are introduced to you. Okay? Everything is taught and learned. So regardless of who's teaching you, so when people give that narrative, you supposed to just know and know what to do, and, just build this fairy tale American dream, which is really actually an illusion, to where if you do this and you play this blueprint, or listen to these directions, you'll be successful. But we don't factor in the dysfunction and the trauma and the set plans. And when I talked about deflecting, that's a part of that. Where we deflect from reality. Where people hope and a wish that, we can have a Care Bear world and everything would just go back to normal, and, everything's going to be all right. But we keep coming back to the same position. Generation after generation, century after century. We see even worse. When I even just thought about it, looking from the 2000s to now, and it's 2023, 23 years. How much has changed? How much has evolved? Right? How much things have gotten worse? But to many, because I'm living my best life, I'm eating, I'm growing, I'm building, I'm doing this, it seems like everything is good. So when you look at a generation that has been set up for failure, when you look at a people that has been set up for failure, from our parents to our parents' parents to their parents and so on, where things were actually put in place, to where we think, oh, we've gotten somewhere, we're getting it. So when I hear people talk about, young man, pull your pants up, don't be a D-boy, girl, come off the streets, why you having all these kids? We see the heightened marriage and divorce rates. We see the heightening of dysfunction in the Black community. We see this happening and that happening. And I'm just like, when I come back to it, I'm like, well, what's the root? We didn't just get here overnight. So that's a part of the deflection part that I talk about, because there are some things that people say your grandfather, then you end up being brought into, that you didn't even know what you were dealing with. Even though you have all these modern day women, and they say modern day men, and this generation that's so lost and so thrown, but how did we get here? So it's like talking about the problem, but not dealing with the true solution. So how can we solve this problem when we don't even deal with the root issues? So if we take it back and even just think about, okay, we think about, okay, slavery. Many of us didn't ask to be here. Nobody did. Let's speak real. Nobody asked to be here as far as African Americans that came to America, that we brush off. We were brought here. But at the same time, it's scripture. Because of idolatry, because of disobedience, because of serving idols, not listening. A specific people, a chosen people, right? Me and my brothers and sisters all over the world, we end up dealing with cycles and patterns of dysfunction and poverty and fighting and all this different stuff because we choose not to still understand and listen, which we didn't know. Many of these things we're coming to the awareness of now and over the past years. Things that we weren't taught, things that we didn't know. It was hidden in plain sight. On top of, we've had people of our own culture. We've had people of different races, wicked folk that have done a good job of keeping us entangled, keeping us distracted, keeping us thirsty and hungry for fame and fortune. But again, you will hear people say, go back to your country. Come on, that's like a let you know right there. So you will blame a people. So when I hear people, like I said again, to say they'll blame, and I'm not saying don't take accountability, okay? Because we don't give pity for stuff. But when we try to just deal with the trauma and just deal with, this is what you need to do, learn to love yourself, all those things are fine and dandy. But when we actually really think about how we get here, it was dysfunctional. On top of when we think of blessings and curses, it is exactly what it is. And as I said, this video is not for everyone. So not even realizing that we've been living a cursed life. Parents being cursed, us being cursed. We see in generational curses, cycles and patterns. It's become normal. Black death has become normal. It's not just now. It's been going on. From different pathways. So when people say, even with believers, just love everybody, treat everybody, when you don't deal with the root. So even when I was confused and I'm like, this don't make sense as far as black folk the most attacked and then Christians. What's the correlation? Make it make sense for me. So when I begin to understand and even see, okay, find out later, okay, black folk, the chosen people, okay, that was hidden. Then as far as Christians, we believe in Jesus Christ, even the name that they're striving to take away now and have people not speak. Yes, God has all these different names and you can call Jesus who you want to call him. But like I said, for me, the name above all names, the names that demons tremble at is the name Jesus. So even when I've mentioned in previous videos, when too many people are going the same way, that makes me kind of leery and go the opposite way. But even looking at it from perspective of the very thing, the name Jesus, that should make people think, if that's the name that they're trying to throw out and take away, even the word, that should send up a red flag to like, why? What is it that is so powerful about that name? When people begin to speak that name, yes, you can call him Jehovah Jireh and he has other names, just like we have first, middle, last names, right? But it's still the same person. But it's something about that name. At the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. So even when I think about the different things the Lord has been dealing with me to speak about, even with my generation, when he had me to write down a timeline of my life, different things that I've experienced. And I was at a point to where you going through things, you experiencing things, and nobody really wants to say, correct this or correct that. But then understanding that they didn't even know. So now we're at a time frame that you have an awakening taking place where people are beginning to deal with trauma, beginning to look over their lives and say, hey, I missed it right here, or this has affected my life. And the very things that I hear even some folk talk about with their children or their grandchildren, or just the level of hatred and selfishness. You see yourself in that person, in your child, in your loved one. Even the ones people follow, people listen to, whether it be rap, whether it be the industry, whether it be somebody that's around you at work, it's something that draws you to that person because it's something that is they're speaking or something that they've done that you can relate to and identify with. So with the enemy being so crafty, he has us so entangled and he makes order out of chaos. So with the acceleration rate that we have right now and getting up to speed, it's vital to hit certain nuggets right now. Proverbs 24:16-18. This is the King James Version. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let thine heart not be glad when they stumbleth, lest the Lord see it and displease him and turn his wrath from them. You will hear people say, that's what you get. That's what you deserve. Many of us have failed and fallen short, make mistakes. So when I hear this this get rich scheme, or, just if you just do this and do that, this formula, right? This worldly blueprint, everything will fall into place. But that's not the case. And it's not the case for everyone. Again, how do we get here? A part of it is our sin. But some of the things that we are facing and dealing with now is come from ancestral things that have passed down throughout generation. So this is a generation that's not aware because it wasn't spoken about. So each generation, it has gotten watered down and more watered down to where we pacify. Even when I look as a people and my culture, so-called, that we have allowed ourselves to accommodate everyone else, to make everyone else comfortable. If you can't beat them, join them. Let's allow them to feel comfortable. And at the same time, we're watching our communities fail, our communities fall. We're watching families destroyed. But you were expected to know. So if everything is taught and learned, even the Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. And when they get old, they won't depart from it. So if everything is taught and learned, how can you expect somebody to know if they weren't taught it? So if it didn't come from home, and then it didn't come from the church, who is coming from? So now we have a world ideology that's being passed on to our children, that's being passed on to our families. So we're trying to figure out what will make a people continue to stay in this state. Can these dry bones live? Do you want different? So being just is honest, being truthful. So when I said it's sometimes where you have loved ones and different people, you're really looking at your reflection in the mirror with your children, or people that you give insight to. So you'll see where certain people can give advice and encouragement to everybody else on the job and the church. But then at home is suffering. At home you're not dealing with. So everything else will be put before family. So then we see a deprivation. So we're trying to understand, how is it that my daughter or my daughter's daughter, or how I am still, I'm talking about my people right now. Like I said, this ain't for everybody. How we are still living in a mindset of broken families. We're living in a mindset of don't even respect your community. We didn't just get here overnight, because not even realizing a lot of things that are happening that, we didn't know about redlining. Let me talk about me and my generation, because these are things that I've talked about even with some of the older ones, like 40s, 50s, right? Find out stuff later. Like you may have heard about it, but it wasn't actually taught. This is why it's such a discrepancy and such a uproar in the wanting to discuss slavery or things that we experience. So it's not just slavery. It's a continuous pattern of the trauma, the cycles, the continuous things that we see in the Black communities. Strategically for African Americans and Africans, and for the 12 tribes for God's chosen. To where it was brushed off and looked off as if nothing is going on, but then we're looking at the same things over and over again. So we've become ignorant and naive, and we weren't taught certain things. So the word even talks about a lack of counsel and guidance, right? Proverbs 11:14, where no counsel is, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So we can uplift and encourage every other people group. We can stand with every other movement, but can't stand for our own people. But then when we see deletions taking place, when I talked about even looking from the 2000 to now, okay, to how so much has changed quickly. Even when the Lord led me to write down a timeline of my life and how much your life can change in the blink of an eye. We've seen so many that it seems like, they're successful and things are going, but in the blink of an eye, their whole life can be changed. The pandemic can show y'all how much in the blink of an eye, your life can be changed. So it's fine and okay to talk about, the trauma and these different issues that we experience, but what happened to correction and conviction? Talking about actually our sins. Realizing that we are dealing with generational curses, cycles and patterns. But at the same time, because of people think that you may be good in this area, you still lack in another area. So I've seen, let me give this example. I've seen women and mothers, okay, because the Lord has drawn me to different age brackets and men, women, and children. So I'm learning to listen. I want to talk a lot, but I'm learning to listen. To where some hadn't even healed from previous marriages or relationships that have damaged them. So in the generation of me coming up as an 80s baby, what happened in the 70s, I was not aware of. The feminist movement, and when they talk about, it's the woman's fault and all these different things. So we end up born into, different generations of dysfunction that we're not even aware of. And certain mindsets that are placed on us from mothers and fathers. So when the sins of the father and the mother pass down to the third and fourth generation, we're seeing that now. So when we see mindsets of the modern day woman, or different thing as far as men not want to take care of their children or step in their role as men, how did we get here? So yes, we chose and we made decisions, but let's not deflect from the fact that it was strategic things put in place to already destroy us anyways. To self-sabotage, to help us destroy ourselves. Because first and foremost, we didn't even know we was cursed. We missed that part. We're coming to the awareness now, some. But what about the part that the nations conspired to keep a people from ever becoming a nation? So what we're fighting to walk into is the birth of a nation, a waking up of a people. But you can't do what you want to do, and we can't do what everybody else does and get away with it, because to much is given, much is required. So we're even watching our own people in this time, to where for the love of money, for the sacrificing of whatever they have to sacrifice to get fame and fortune in this life, not contemplating or thinking about when you leave this earth, where are you going? To know that heaven and hell is very much so real. So even when people will look at me now and I hear people say, well, she's a preacher and what is she? You prophesy now, you're evangelist. These things, even for myself, they were already in me. God is just allowing things to manifest. How life experiences, relationship, hardships. My stuff didn't come from no picket fence and no your ordinary ideal way it was supposed to come. It came through mistakes. It came from hardships. So even when the word talks about Hosea 4 and 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. So when we see these heightened death tolls in the Black community of the children, I'm not just talking about the young, I'm talking about the older adults, parents bearing their children. We're seeing the heightening of domestic violence. We're seeing the heightening of these different areas, spiritual warfare on an all-time high, where we have touched stuff and the enemy has legal right. So he couldn't curse us, but he could help us curse ourselves. So that's exactly what he did. So he's allowed us to help ourselves slow walk to destruction. So through disobedience, through rebellion, our sin, pride, lust, the love of money, things that we're not talking about, even being corrected, even in church, being corrected in our families. So we're seeing cycles of patterns of you may have money over here and be good, but you broken in relationships. You may have this part, but over here you broken. So what is it to gain the whole world and lose your soul? Folk losing their mind because now you end up in relationship with somebody. Because when I talked about in the beginning about where there is no counsel or no guidance, the people fall. So that's direction, right? On top of we've had parents. Come on, let's keep it real, because we got to deal with these issues. So there's certain things that I didn't want to talk about, the Lord has been leading me to talk about. But if we don't deal with things at root and at hand, basic level stuff, the root issues, things can't really change, because we're not really talking about what's real. We're not being just, honest, and true. So when you have people trying to figure out, how did we get here? How did my child get here? Some of those same characteristics that you see in your child come from you. You have some parents and some parents. You didn't even raise your children. You got a divorce. You didn't teach your children or heal from your issues and your past issues. So when you birth, come on women, when you birthed another child into this earth, into this world, all of that trauma, all of that brokenness, all of that hurt, on top of who you connected with in intercourse, those things pass through that child. So when you talk about division, brokenness, depression, hurt, I shouldn't have did this, wouldn't have did this. We know when you have kids, those emotions, women, it passes through. So when we have a generation that's trying to figure out, how did we get here? And at the same time, let me give you the revelation and give it to you real. What you do comes back to you. So you can deflect, ignore, argue, and debate and go back and forth with men and women about pointing the finger. You're going to have to personally, as an individual, deal with your life, deal with your generational curses, deal with your own self curses, things that we unfortunately ignorantly even walked into. It's unfortunate, but it's real. So God has a remnant and a generation that's raising them now that speaks the language. Hey, look, I didn't even know what I was dealing with. Let me speak for myself. I didn't find out till later that I was fighting generational curses. Certain things that I dealt with in relationships, even from my own father, lacking guidance, lacking counsel, direction. But he may have not been taught. He wasn't taught. So when people say you make a choice, yes, you make a choice. There are some that may go the right way and do the right thing. But as a culture and a majority of people, many of us weren't taught. So even though you may have, I still see a lot of balling women or think they're successful, but they single. They got kids out of wedlock too. So who you talking to? Even by somebody's conversation, when I talked about experience, okay, things that you're around, you can identify with, okay, being broken, identifying if somebody was on drugs and you were around it growing up, you can see it in somebody else. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care about their title, their office, their degree. You can recognize it, right? Certain things that you may have experienced in yourself. when you see it in somebody else, you can recognize it because it's familiar spirits. So we tend to continue to keep talking about folk. But as I said, how do we get here? First, okay, one, curses. Come on, Lord. Curses, right? Curses from generation to generation that we didn't even know, didn't talk about, we weren't familiar with. But then two, you've had nations, come on, two, that have conspired to keep a people down through systems, right? It is exactly what it is. Different ways and different systems to keep a people down. On top of to put things in our place. I mentioned that it was certain things until I was introduced to it, I didn't know nothing about it. This is a part of where that counsel comes in, that guidance comes in, that we need from a male, from a father. So even strategically breaking up the home, it was not by coincidence. But just blaming the woman is not just by coincidence. Yes, it is real. But you have a generation, like I said, even myself, it's certain things I didn't even know. So when I talk about being grandfathered in, basically I'm indicted and inducted and convicted and being judged and having to deal with things that passed through a generation that I wasn't even aware about. So when you're talking about fighting giants and fighting battles that wasn't discussed and talked about, but now we're talking about it, but even with my own kids, I'm fighting certain things. When I thought it was just me, I'm meeting people and the Lord is dealing with me. It's even in my assignment where this is familiar. Somebody else is dealing with this. So it's either, do you want to be healed for real? So when I talked about even the Russian roulette and folk playing with death, not even realizing it. Some of them, you know what time it is. The lifestyles that you have, the mindset that you have. And we sit back and we have watched from generation to generation to where you think that you can just go on and nothing will change. No, baby, change comes with change. So where some have, we have a generation of parents that have even learned, men and women, to deflect from the truth, to block it out. The mind is so powerful, it will block out trauma. But when you don't deal with the root and how you got here, you can get counseled all day. You can go to every psychologist. You can go to every therapist, whatever you want to deal with. But recognizing as believers, this is not just natural, it's spiritual, and they correlate. So when you're trying to figure out, when you're trying to do the right thing, and I'm trying to do this, what is this thing? This doesn't make sense. Yes, a lot of this is witchcraft, spiritual warfare, because Satan plays on our ignorance. So many of us being brought up in church, being brought up in being a spiritual people. So if the enemy knows who God's chosen is, even the church, our brothers and sisters in Christ of different races and different brackets, that some are even being persecuted right now. We all have our own battles and fights. But understanding too, you have a target on you, my black people, the body of Christ. So even though you may straddle the fence and you feel like, you know what, I'm just going to do this part, that's too deep, that's too much for me, you still got a target on you. You're just an easier target to take out because you're not really walking in your purpose. So even some of those that are walking in their purpose and their assignment, because you straddle the fence and you say, I'm not going to say Jesus too much, and I'm not going to talk about how God has changed my life, which is really changing the generation. People draw to what they can identify, even in change. When you begin to say, hey, it is God that brought me out. It ain't man, it ain't this deal, it ain't this business, it ain't none of this. Even where I'm at right now, it wasn't none of that. So even in my walk, even while I still push and press right now, it's because even with my timeline, but even how God will take you down memory lane, look, you could have been gone. So when I talk about this generation, even the young folk, playing Russian roulette with your life, the robbing and the stealing and the trapping, but you watch homeboys, different people in your neighborhood, your city, ganging and banging and all this, it was a trap. Set you up to fail. At the same time, God knows that it was stuff strategically put in place. God is judging that. He's judging those people, the nations, the governments, the systems that were put in place to help destroy his people, his church and his chosen people. But at the same time, he's been getting his people's attention. Hey, I need you to speak truth about your life and your walk, because that's what's going to draw somebody in. It's different perspectives of how God has used us in different ways, how he's brought us out of darkness, how he's brought us out of the pit. But when you're not convicting me and you're not correcting me, but you want to, you know what, this Care Bear world, let's all just live the way we want to live. But then you watching people dying from sickness and disease because everybody can do what they want to do, right? Sounds real good, huh? But when the death tolls go up, folk trying to understand why tornado hitting over here, pandemics hitting over here. God allows Satan permission to touch some stuff, and people really dying. When it be close and personal, when we supposed to have discernment, but because it's getting hot outside, you know, hot girl summer, hot boy summer, you smelling yourself. Well, we've been downgraded to an animal, almost said the word, help me Lord, to a dog, male and female, where you sniffing around to see what you can get next, wanting to be seen. Where life is of the essence of where your life could be gone in the blink of an eye. Your whole life can change quickly. So even when I talked about recently, and I don't know if I did it on these videos, but I know I did it on Facebook. When I talked about in 1999, I wasn't even aware that we was in the 666, baby. So even when I look back on my own life, how much God has had his hand on my life, but even how he will go and operate in time, despite what Satan is doing and everything else, how God operates in time, because he is time, to have his hand over your life, over my life, over our parents' lives. So some people even think that because you are of an older age, look, hell, wherever your destination is, it will be heaven or hell. Just because your age don't mean your destination change. If your life ain't changed, if your mindset ain't changed, I don't care if you went to church, I don't care if you say you just got saved, baby, it's a walk that comes with this. It's a lifestyle change. And one of the realest things that I learned when I actually started striving to take my walk serious, and some people say it seemed like all hell and chaos broke through. It got real. When I began to change, folk that was comfortable me being complacent, and I was listening and passive in relationships and stuff like that. Oh, that's when it got real. Because I began to change. Something's different. So when people be stuck in your past, we in our present, look, moving on to the future, and folks still stuck. So in July 7th, 1996, the New World Order, NWO, professional wrestling. It was its anniversary. Okay? Excuse me. July 7th, 1996 is when it started. So the 25th anniversary was July 7th, 2021. Okay? The roots started in the 1940s as far as the wrestling period. Why am I talking about this? Because the enemy does so much in plain sight to how he's been on that demon time. He's been using us to be ignorant through things that we are intrigued by. Okay? Satan is over the sound waves, music, entertainment, TV, news, everything. So a part of even how we got here is understanding where we came from. So I mentioned, like I said, even with 1999, like I said, it's not just me that's been talking about this stuff, right? 1999 flipped to 666. We was already on that demon time. 2000 was a new millennium. We know we had Y2K. When things begin to happen, and understanding too, things are familiar. It's nothing new under the sun. We have went through cycles and patterns of the enemy moving to forward their momentum as far as the NWO. As far as the New World Order, as far as the beast system. I'm probably going to have to put this on Rumble, okay? Different things that we were not aware of. So just because we sleep, Just because many of us have been ignorant and didn't know doesn't mean that Satan's plans have stopped. Just because we in our feelings and our emotions and trying to live, and that's what he's done too for my people, having us so just trying to survive, trying to live, having us so entangled, so broken, making so many mistakes even through things that we've been entangled with, right? From the breakup of the home and the music and, striving to survive and people telling us the formula, you just do this and you do that. But it has been spiritual things, wicked things that have been put in place to keep us deprived. So when you tell people, hey, just stop doing this and stop doing that, where did it come from? So yes, you talking about a cursed people, even in relationships. You're talking about Delilah's put in place. He's used us, people. Not just my people. He's used many different people groups. Whoever Satan can use, even myself. So as far as I'm concerned, everybody been deceived. So because now we're at a place now, we're actually here. So even when growing up, I used to hear about the last days, being ready, left behind, all these different things. Now that we are actually here, the enemy has been so crafty for 23 years, even though we different age brackets that have correlated in between, to where we're not even aware of how close we actually are, how things have been getting destroyed. I gave the example of how God uses different people. He's been using different people at different time frames. Wake up calls, his people. I mentioned a few years back about the revelation and the dream that I had. It was the angel that came to visit me, that it was destruction and then it was restoration. Some things have to be destroyed. There is no talking. Even you think about Sodom and Gomorrah when the city was destroyed. Folk want to talk and debate about, well, you know what? Let's just everybody be accepted. It's a Care Bear world, transformation, all this other stuff. People allowing folk to lead you straight to hell. So because I've had folk not tell me, and I had to deal with personal hits throughout my life because of lack of guidance, lack of counsel, to where at the same time, God began to deal with me. Okay, I need you to pay attention. I'm going to get them for their part. But I need you to focus and pay attention on what you missed. I'm like, I didn't sign up for this. Why didn't nobody tell me? So a part of even my assignment is shining light on things that we weren't told. We didn't recognize. So some of the people that I talk to and that identify with me may come from the streets. Baby mamas, single mamas. The very things that I experienced. If I can help somebody else, why go through, come on, like Russian roulette? Why you want to make the same mistakes? Help somebody else. Because I'm going to tell you now, money ain't going to save you. So even like I said, 2000, we had a new millennium. We was on that crunk season, right? That's when all the dope boys was going crazy with Jeezy. Even it was a heightened time of the fighting, and let me talk about where I'm from. The fighting and people just trying to make it. On top of you had a collaboration of music groups, and I didn't even realize until things that I experienced and the Lord actually took me back down memory lane, how impactful music, the sound waves, things that we hear, things that we're exposed to, things that we're taught in our family, in the church, how all these different things that we experience in our life impact us. Even the level of selfishness in people. To how we end up so intermingled to with, I'm just going to do me. Let me focus on me. So as I said earlier, you have generations where we watch and support every other race, every other culture. So it's like, are you waiting for our people to die out like dinosaurs? You got folk betting on us like BET, betting on us to fail, betting on us to be destroyed. The more they see y'all little young niggas robbing and stealing or robbing young boys that I see y'all robbing for waters, you Russian roulette, playing with death. playing with the devil. You got these little young rappers already telling y'all he taking y'all with him to hell. Things that I didn't even realize that I listened to, that I wasn't aware of how powerful music was. You got Elon Musk that look a little off to me anyways, that's telling folk it's a lot of people going to hell. But it's going over people's head. But then we seeing a pandemic happening. We seeing all these different things happening, storms and tornadoes. Even here in Georgia, we got a whole, state of emergency. We've seen things happen these past few years accelerate time after time, over and over, back to back to back. Ohio, this, that. You think this ain't no acceleration in this year? Come on, 2,300 an hour. So when I talk about, do you really, this is a point where, do you value your life? So what the enemy's job was to have us so messed up and so vulnerable and so distracted to where we destroy ourselves. Let me let them deal with divorce. Let me let them deal with poverty and oppression. Let me let them continue to go on the Ferris wheel, on that wheel that the rat goes on over and over again. Keep them running circles. But then that very Ferris wheel and circle and cycles and patterns that the enemy allowed us to go through, God was using it to perfect his people. I'm going to let you take this lesson again because you didn't get it. Start over. Where it could have been you could have been one of your homeboys. Because when you live this earth, homeboys, homegirls, your daughter, your child, it's a lot of young folk being taken up out of here. So when I talk about speaking the language, I ain't talking to everybody. From being around dope boys, being in the environment. So even when I hear people that I grew up with, people that I went to school with, people that I've even recognized and seen, you speak the language. It's something that you speak how God has brought you out. God didn't just bring us out for us. Being able to understand and identify, why is it that your child keep running away? Why is it that our children keep dealing with the same stuff? A part of that is what I even tell women. The ones that sent to me, because everybody can't hang too long. What have you done? What have you touched? What's in your generation? Your mama, your daddy, being able to identify what you've experienced, what you've seen. And I give the example of a lot of this, some of this is by default that we did not know. But then you have a modernized generation that we all get coupled in the same thing, stereotyped in the same thing, where you have some of us that are daring to be different. That yes, you made mistakes, but you are not a product of your environment. You do not have to be. And the only way that is possible is with God. So when people wonder and question why I keep pushing and I keep pressing, it is nobody but God. Because when I look back over my life, the things that he's brought me from, where I dated dope boys, to where I would have just left and somebody got murdered, somebody got set up. At that time, of course, I wasn't paying that stuff no attention. I was just living. What people I know dead and gone. I'm going to people's funerals. Come on, 1999, 2000. We didn't even know. On that demon time. Hey, folks talking about demon time now? Oh, we was already in here. G20 Summit. The G20 Summit was founded in 1999. 666. Response to the, and I don't own the rights to this, some of these things that I read, okay? In response to the several world economic crises. Since 2008, it was convened at least once a year with summits involving each member's head of the government or state, finance minister, foreign minister, and other ranking officials. The EU is represented by the European Commission and the European Central Bank. Other countries, international organizations, and non-governmental organizations are invited to attend these summits. Some permit on a basis. So different things that we have been seeing that we weren't even taught to, even with politics, education, that we were dumbed down on. To where, like I said, because we've been so stuck on just trying to survive, trying to live, everybody trying to get the bag, get the money. At the same time, you got people making decisions, world decisions for everybody. It ain't just black folk, for everybody. That pandemic was for everybody. How God allowed people to be touched. How you would talk about, this is why I tell folk, be careful how you treat people. Because that death angel is roaming. Okay? Plus Satan is on that demon time. So if you have touched something through your sin, come on, we don't acknowledge and deal with our issues, generational curses. When people are confused to why this is happening, that is happening. People are just deleting themselves or deleting their parents or deleting their girlfriends or loved ones or families. This is an all-out warfare. So many people are only looking from the natural perspective, but baby, this is spiritual. You got your rappers, you got different folk, even in these movies, talking to you about demon time, talking to you about the devil and demonic, but it goes over the head. Everybody turned up in the club. Look, I was there. Didn't even know. While we turned up and turned out, if you die in your sin, if you be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and get shot up at the club, come on. If you get shot, even in an accident, accidents can happen. Unforeseen things can happen. If your soul wasn't right, the wrong place at the wrong time. This is why even I talk to these young girls, just anybody, women, period. You get up in the wrong relationship, in your feelings, because you didn't deal with your issues. You didn't deal with your lust. You didn't deal with your hurt, your trauma, your generational curses from your daddy, from your mama that passed down to your kids. And you trying to figure out why folk not married, why people not together, and folk keep having these same debates and conversations, but the same slick Rick come back again. I learned this the hard way. So let me help you and drop game to you. What we'll say wisdom, cycles and patterns. So I know folk that got degrees and they balling, they got all this stuff, but they broken, have no man, not married, got kids out of wedlock. It's not just the ones that y'all call every now and again, oh, she's just using people. Yes, you do have some that are like that. You have some women that are thirsty. You have some women that trap and use people. Some of these women are very shady, shisty heifers. I've met some. I've had to learn from. Come on, didn't I say learn from everything? But you got some Negroes that's just as shady as too. But where they come from? So when you think about a mother and a father getting together, married and not married, those different characteristics, generational curses, let's look like DNA. Come on, that Dana. That combined, that come through that womb, that egg, that's birthed into this earth. So you talking about trauma, hurt, dysfunction, on top of brokenness, on top of generational curses, on top of witchcraft, all coming through that egg. Born into sin and shaping into iniquity. So when we're confused of how we got here, I try to give my child everything that they needed. We talking about the surface area, but we not getting down to the bottom. Folk that's from the Ville know what I'm talking about when you talk about down bottom. So you got folk coming from the hood, coming from different places. You cannot run. You cannot hide from your sin. You will not be able to run from generational curses. You can try to figure out, make it make sense. But until you put God first in everything that you do and be able to deal with you and self-reflect, you will end up in the same cycles and patterns. So even while the enemy has attacked so hard, a part of even just keeping us stuck, because if I allow a people to wake up, they actually know that they were chosen, they were called. Everything is not by coincidence. So even before mistakes and mishaps that I had, I was called before then. The word says, before I formed you in your mother's womb. Come on, Jeremiah 29:9. Let's 29:11. Let's bring it back. Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. I called you to be a prophet among the nations. Come on, if it's a little mixed up, you know what I'm talking about. I know the plans that I have for you, to prosper you. Come on, Holy Spirit, not to harm you. How God will bring back scripture and revelation and different things, how even just being in church, things that I've seen and experienced even in church. This is why I don't play with folk, because certain things that I see then that I see now that has just accelerated. So if you think it's okay to lead people astray, even your own kids, even in the church, you think God ain't cleaning this up for nothing? It's only been a few years I've been doing this walk as far as in God's timing. But as far as my walk and my journey and my purpose, I've been here. I'm not no juvenile. This is not new to me. So people will think, oh, it's only because she went through this, and baby, before I lost my mind, before I dealt with certain things, I was dealing with attacks from the enemy beforehand. So as soon as you come into this earth and you're birthed into purpose, so when a woman gives birth, that's a part of your purpose. You think the enemy trying to shake this thing up and switch things up for men on purpose? It is. Bringing about confusion on purpose? Having our men so distraught and so emotional on purpose? Of course. So you can be so distracted. But to understand, we in March, marching right on into April. So with certain things, when even God dealt with me in my own timeline, I want you to pay attention to certain cycles and patterns, even months to years, to where it was certain years where things began to happen. Specific months, year after year, that I wasn't even aware of. Spiritual warfare, witchcraft that I wasn't even aware of that I was fighting. So when I listen to preachers and teachers and different folk that would talk to people about, you need to do this, you need to do this, and you do that. What is it that you ain't dealt with? Because it flows down. Even in our homes and our household, because it's destroyed. So since they cut the fathers out, what you got dealing with in the mama, even after you out of the womb, it flows down. So you wonder why you not married yet, or why you didn't have 2, 3, 4 marriages, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids. It flows down. So we're pointing fingers at our families, at our culture, at the people, at the politics. What is the root? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. So the word sounds real good, right? The word is good by itself, but the walk is different. We don't all walk the same. We don't all go down the same path. We're fighting towards getting to the end of our race. The fight of the finish. But when you try to tell somebody that has been through trials and tribulations, that has been in a system of people in a culture, that has been stripped, that has been taught to, you are nothing but a thought, you are nothing but a dope boy, your people are nothing. And it ain't just the talking it, it's the things that were set in place. But you deflect from that. You deflect from redlining. You deflect from helping break up the home. Yes, the woman listened then and she listened now. Nothing's new under the sun. Eve is the mother of all mothers. So when I hear women talk that talk game about, oh, you know, it's the man and I don't know. No, we listened. Even some of your own mamas and grandmas. Some of your daddies, Papa was a Rolling Stone. So you trying to figure out why your son don't take care of his kids. Why you trying to figure out this boy ain't making it and he's out on the street with his pants pulled down. Where did this come from? So not only a cursed people, you got a wicked nations, plural, that have put stuff in place and God is judging this. So when people, let me put it like this. When the Lord brought this back to my remembrance from things that I experienced. From 2007, 2008, when we saw the heightening of overdosing and mental health and the deletions and different things that were taking place, but people going about business as usual. But some of y'all had to hit close to your family, right? What are we seeing now on another level? Where did these things come from? So we already are aware that things were put in our communities on purpose. But just as in Exodus as it is in now, what you use to destroy God's people will come back on y'all. This is why even in the scripture when I read it, you know, don't wish bad on nobody. Be careful what you say about folk, because most folks say, well, you know, that's what you get and God will bring it back on you. Be careful. I've learned to move out of the way. Once I say what I say and the Lord give me what to say, it is what it is. So when I talked about even dealing with the root issues, there were things that I experienced in my life, in my story. We all have our own story, our own walk. And God is leading designated strategic people, called divine people, to share your story. But not be afraid to share that who was the one that brought you out. So many get caught up in fame and fortune and get caught up in the movement Is God truly in the movement? So what seems like it's really a movement, it's actually Satan moving you out the way. He'll let you scratch the surface as long as nobody's really being delivered and healed for real. Come on, let's look at our churches. You think this pandemic was for nothing? Churches got shut down. If you're not really hitting the surface and people really getting delivered and healed, come on, from spiritual warfare, from the demonic, from generational curses, oh, you're not a threat. So preach on, teach on, dance on, perform on, sing on. Keep moving, because you ain't really, you're not really a problem right now. So when you talk about spiritual warfare hitting on another level, ones that God is rising up now, it's not just for me. Because you got a generation that's dealing with generational curses, generational witchcraft, on top of dealing with stuff from their own self-sabotaging things that we didn't even know were put into place to destroy us. So your money ain't gonna mean nothing. You could throw them dollars up in the air all you want, because some folk leave right out the club and somebody's shooting. It could be you that your life be taken. It's been some of us where you've been at the wrong place at the wrong time, but God still covered you and you walked away. But somebody that you knew didn't. It could have been your child. Instead of speaking the truth to these young girls that may be having kids out of wedlock, you talk about them. But how about sharing your story, your testimony about how God brought you out? That's what I'm here to do. Because many will point the finger and talk about folk. And we have learned to and have been conditioned to keep going. Suck it up. Suck it up. Suck it up, men and women. So you telling me a good talk game, it sound good. Telling me go to counseling, therapy, and all these different things. But what is it when that person still got home and they got to deal with those same issues? So it's a balance. It's a combination of things that God uses. He's a personal God. When God really begins to deal with you and check, he deals with every aspect of your life. He deals with the natural and the spiritual. Your relationships, how you treat people, appreciating what you have. Take care of your car. Take care of your house. Take care of your spiritual house. It's a combination of things. We want God to fight on our behalf. We want him to move on our behalf. But we want to do it the way we want to do it. What have we seen over 23 years has happened? And we finishing up this year. Come on, at 2300 hour. Tick-tock, 12 o'clock strikes the clock. How we are already here. So much more closer than people actually realize. So yes, through oppression, through different things the enemy has used us to have us so distraught, so messed up, to hope and a wish that a system, that a world that doesn't even like us, that is, come on, demonic. Satan already knows he cannot be redeemed. So he has agents. He has people that he has designated that have got drafted in, just the same as how God has drafted people in, chosen people in. Satan is doing the same thing. He's opposite of God. Come on, duplicated, never imitated. He can never be, but he gives an illusion that I'm just as God. So you have a generation that think they can't be touching that as if they're God. So when God is correcting on, it seems like the lower levels, when he's working on the family, when he's working on us as individuals, it's for a reason. Your soul is at stake. Your life is at stake. The word again says, you reject truth, you reject knowledge, you reject my word, I reject your kids. Why these kids getting buried? Why these kids dying right and left, out their mind? ADHD, sickness, disease on an all-time high. Come on, let's be real. Keep thinking it's just the world and don't think that this is not a wicked and satanic world. How death can sometimes be a lot closer than you think. Talking to somebody that's coming real. So when I see y'all young folk, because I understand and I can identify. I done watch folk. I done went to funerals. How they say you done skated from death. The Lord brought that back to my remembrance. How there's been places I left, just left. And in that moment, I didn't even understand or identify that that was even taking place. How you can be about the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong person. How so, yes, some women are setting niggas up for failure. Some of these heifers is Delilah and Jezebels. Some of them by default and just need a little cleaning up. Some of these men, yes, are Ahabs by default. They need a little cleaning up and pushing, not pulled down. So when people talk about you did this and you did that, some folk didn't know. Let's talk about the root at hand. It was stuff put in place. Folk would throw that out the picture and go straight to, you should know better. You should do this. Did you ask your mama, did she know better? Did you ask your daddy, did he know better? Did you ask they mama, did they know better? The wisdom is to teach the next generation. I said it and I meant it. All out of love. So when you sit here and you watch around your kids falling and you talking about this lost generation and everybody else, what part did you play? Those demons that you had and those generational curses that is manifesting in these kids and these young folk that did need help and deliverance, it came from down the line. And that ain't just for black folk. When you see these white folk and these kids, I'm gonna have to put this on Rumble. Everybody Rumble up. When you see this stuff passing down, stripped and stolen, but how the very thing that the enemy meant for people's bad, for God's people for bad, God would turn it around for your good. Folk think people just started changing overnight just cause. No, it was some real life hits. It was a visitation. Don't miss your visitation. So when I see folk and they give up and they let go, I understand. Because I have to pray every day. Lord, help and keep me, because when you're striving to do the right thing, when God is actually using you and pushing you into purpose, I'm going to be honest, especially in this generation, even though it's different age brackets, the enemy started to attack even harder. I thought it was something in 2014 when I started getting attacked and started seeing people for their true colors. Baby, the more I started moving within God's timing, and I ain't even on the level with so-called some folk as far as the outward appearance, the natural part, as far as having this and having that. When I say witches and folk been attacking like I don't know what, I say, well, God doggone, what you see? That's a part of knowing your power. That speaks volumes. That you're actually, some of us, you know, you are actually more powerful than you think. It's gaining access. Things that were already placed inside of us, it's just to be made manifest. So while you got these other folk leveling up and renewing their contracts, come on. Folk ain't just climbing the ranks to the top of the pyramid for nothing. They've been promised some things. But what you be promised here on this earth, baby, when you leave here, that's it. So when I see some folk, yeah, they may go to the industry. Yeah, they may go to the streets. Yeah, they may go the wrong way, make wrong decisions. Even myself. We lack counsel. We lack guidance. We lack truth and honesty. So versus somebody being real and say, hey, look, I'm about to give up. I'm about to lose my mind. I'm tired. You wait until it's too late. Then we want to talk about deletions and mental health and suicide and all this other stuff. What about the preventative measures? What could we have done to help before it got to this far? Versus you just brushing it off and want to talk around a circle all the time. Let's deal about these root issues. How did you get here? It was something that happened before this. That's why when I say somebody, generational curses, lust and pride and sin, as I mentioned, certain things that I was introduced to, whether it was drugs, sex, different things, it came from somebody. Even though a spirit may have used them and they may have been entangled some stuff, we didn't see that part. We see the person. Make it make sense. So when we see people introduced to sagging and all these different things, where did it come from? Let's go back to the root. Yes, we see the residue and we see the results. But when you don't deal with the problem, how can somebody listen to you and talk to you when you ain't dealing with the root issues? That's why we keep on the Ferris wheel. And folk go on business as usual. And death tolls are accelerating. And we continue to accelerate. We watching supernatural things already happening. You make a decision and a choice. You got one life to live. I ask God to help me every day and those around me. Lord, give us the strength to press on. Because folk that don't speak the language, you don't understand what it feels like to have certain things put in place on purpose. I talked to my partner the other day about this. When you were set up for failure. Not knowing already we had the other stuff with the curses and stuff, but set up for. Systems put in place. That is still till today. So when folk even deprived from the conversation of reparations, it ain't just slavery, it's still now. You think folk just attacking and stuff for no reason? These Karens and folk talking about black folk, we can't get left alone. That should tell you something right there. So again, when I even say to my young men, even the women, speak life into the young men. On top of sit your butt down. Everything ain't worth it. Somebody didn't tell me, didn't correct me. That's why I share the truth now. The choices that you make, the lifestyles. You got men out here taking women up out of here. You got women doing the same thing. So when I said going down the path exactly what Satan wants, exactly what this wicked world wanted, let them take themselves out. I done put my plan so much in place, I could just sit back and watch them work. So you watching a whole generation dying out. But you'll let social media let you feel like everything is good, everybody balling. When you got a world that's being destroyed, things that's being destroyed right before our eyes. Read right now, even as I speak. What do those things mean? If you lose your mind, if you can't handle pressure when these things happen, that's real. Playing with life, thinking death is nothing but a game. When you leave this earth, that's it. That's it. The enemy will tell you exactly what you want to hear. He did it to Eve. You think he ain't gonna do it to you? Think he ain't gonna do it to me? He used people. That good talk game. Them sweet nothings. It's a part of getting to the root issue. How did we get here? It ain't just you just got here overnight. We didn't just get here in 2023 overnight. This generation didn't just get here just overnight. It took time. So Satan been slow walking us. Slow walking us. Taking folk by the hand. Leading right to destruction. But because God is such a gentleman and such a loving God, how he'll take you by the hand to pull you out the box, to pull you out the matrix, to pull you out of what you thought was, where you thought it was no hope but the streets, where you thought it was no hope but what you see. It's a heart and a mindset right now. Things are happening so quickly, and it's not going to be easy. The reality of it is, yes, the enemy's job is not changed. The kill, steal, and destroy. And you got some folk, it is survival of the fittest. They'll let you fall to save themselves. But a part of my assignment and people that God has been leading up is to help this generation. A combination of age groups, a combination of people. Where some will walk you to your death. Come to your funeral. And talk about your memories. And they were this and they were that. good and bad. But in my mind, I go straight to, was a soul saved? Facts. Y'all be blessed. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'll be back with part 3 soon. Okay? We're going to have a brief intermission.